We've mixed up some slightly thickened epoxy and with a little bit of color. Looks like a putrid green. So we're going to brush on some epoxy, and this will be the first coat on the plugs. And then we'll see, we may need a second coat, but we'll see how that is after the first coat tacks up. We have the epoxy applied. We're going to let this set overnight and probably put a second coat on. And then we'll do some sanding and wet sanding to see what the plugs look like. So we'll be back in the morning. This is the next day, and the resin cured, and I sanded it down with 100 grit. It's looking really smooth now. I'm going to go get some primer filler and spray it with primer filler and then a bright color. I did not like the way the rear fender came out, so I went and I reshaped another piece of foam, and this looks a little bit better. So we'll put some resin on this, let it cure overnight, then we'll sand it down, and then we'll spray both of them with a primer filler, let it cure, wet sand with 400, and then we'll spray some color on top, and then we can get ready to make the tooling with the plugs. Here we have both plugs. They've been sanded with 120 grit paper, and I've gone over a couple low spots with some epoxy filler. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hit these with a tack rag. We're going to come in with some primer and prime these really well. And then we're going to wet sand them with 400. And then we're going to come in with a yellow. And the reason why you want to use a bright color on your plugs is that when you're then making your mold or your tooling and you're laying your laminate down, the bright color lets you see if you have any delaminations where the fiberglass is lifting up. So that way you get a good visual indicator that all of your plies of fiberglass are on the mold or on the tooling is compacted very nicely, so you don't again get any delamination. So let's go ahead. We'll hit these with some tack rag, and then we'll hit some shoot some gray primer on there, let it cure the recommended time, and then we'll shoot some yellow on there, let it sit overnight, and then we can start making our molds or our tooling based on these plugs. I'm using my Wagner spray booth. This is really nice. I have a fan behind it, I have a filter, and it's sucking air out the back. Really nice. I have another video. I'll post that video, the link in the description, so if you want to see how I built this, you can. It's really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot some primer on the mold plugs right now, and then after we get it wet sanded, we'll then shoot some color on. We have the plugs primered, and I put a tremendous amount of primer on there so we can sand out the rough scratch marks in the foam and the epoxy. So I have a bowl of water here. I have some 400 wet dry sandpaper. Now what we're going to do is we're going to wet sand the plugs and get them very smooth. And then what we can do is then after it sets and it gets all sanded and everything, then we can go ahead and we can spray the finish coat, which will be a yellow, on the plugs. So I'm going to go ahead and wet sand this off camera. I'll come back and show you when it's done. We finished spraying the plugs. We're going to let these cure overnight, and then we're going to polish them. At that point, we'll start making the actual tooling from these plugs. So this will be the end of this video. In the next video, we'll actually be making the mold or the tooling, so we can then pull the carbon fiber fender pieces for the e-bike. So we'll see you in the next video.